All right, babe.
What?
We got to make sure that we speak very softly because I don't know if you know this, but there are devices, phone,
Yeah.
Alexa, our computers, they're listening and they're watching
Everything we do.
everything that we do. And you know how I know this?
How do you know?
Because our next guest has spent his life on cybersecurity.
He sure has.
And we are so excited. And usually when I'm gonna pick up my voice now. We'll let
We're
all
excited.
we'll let Alexa and everyone in
Cute
our phones here.
intro.
Yeah, cue intro. Well, let me hop into the intro and then we'll get into our guest today. And I'm so excited to connect with him. But welcome everyone to the Freddie and Alyssa show. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe, like, comment, all that fun YouTube stuff. Alyssa and I have been putting out videos on this channel for years now. We got vlogs. We have a lot of different interviews and podcasts that you can check out. You can find some entertainment and inspiration on our page. Also, we are bookable on Cameo. So if you would like a shout out video for myself or Alyssa or both of us, you can go to cameo.com/FMSmith319. We got the link in the description. And also, shoot us a text. We want to hear from you personally.
Yeah, we do.
424-228-9508. Shoot us a text, ask us some questions, and we're excited to connect with you. Now, for the intro of this guest, for this wonderful gentleman, I think we should actually read.
I do too, and we don't usually do this.
But with this vast of a resume, I want to
We
get it
must.
right, and I'm going to pass it to
You're
you
gonna
to
pass
share
it to
a
me.
little bit about Dr. Eric Cole.
Yes, he's a former CIA hacker and accomplished businessman. With more than 30 years of network security experience, Dr. Eric Cole is a distinguished cybersecurity expert and keynote speaker who helps organizations curtail the risk of cyber threats. Dr. Cole has worked with a variety of clients ranging from Fortune 500 companies to top international banks to the CIA. He has been the featured speaker at many security events and has been interviewed by several chief media outlets such as CNN, CBS News, Fox News, and 60 Minutes. Dr. Eric Cole has also been a member of many key organizations, including the Commission on Cybersecurity for the 44th President, SME for the Nuclear Commission, Purdue University, Executive Advisory Board, and more. As a world-renowned cybersecurity entrepreneur and founder of Secure Anchor Consulting, Dr. Cole understands the dangers of cybersecurity and knows how to build successful companies. Based on his experience, he shares lessons learned from overcoming adversity and staying committed to your purpose. Dr. Cole focuses on security and innovation with a mission to make cyberspace safe in a world where it can be an unrecognized danger and threat.
Now, though I memorize things for a living, that was worth the read.
I think so.
I love
too.
it. I want to ask Dr. Cole about cyber attacks, how to prevent it. I want to talk about Facebook. I want to talk about our data. I want to talk about his time in the CIA. I want to ask about TikTok. We have all these
Are they
things.
listening to us? What do we do? How do we handle it?
Without further ado, Dr. Eric Cole. I've been stalking you on Google and on YouTube, and we have lists of questions, and we're excited. So thank you so much for your interest in the show. We are just so excited to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me. Always love spreading the good word of entrepreneurship and cybersecurity.
Absolutely. And then that's the biggest topic we want to get into. We have a list of questions on that, but we do want to kick it off with your time at the CIA.
Wow.
And we are just super, I know that you were really excited.
That was like my number one thing. I'm like a hacker for the CIA? What? So I'm just so curious. How did that happen? How does one get into that? And what was your time like doing that?
So it's one of those themes that I sort of call the theme of my life, which is listening to that inner voice and just being at the right place at the right time. So real quickly, I majored in computer science. This was back in the 80s when it was really more electrical engineering. And the programming classes were boring. And I wasn't sure if that's what I wanted to do. And probably for a couple of weeks, I was thinking about going down to the intern office, but it was on the other side of campus. And I remember it was a Thursday afternoon. And for some reason in class, I'm like, I have to go today. I just have to go today. So I went down to the intern office and they're like, Eric, funny thing, you should come down because the CIA is recruiting tomorrow. They only come once every 2 years and we have one opening left. Do you want the spot? So I'm like, Sure, why not? So I went in, and this is where being a really boring, clean-cut person actually plays to your advantage. Because I was never one of those ones. Not that there's anything wrong with it on the alcohol, drugs, that kind of stuff. So I was very boring, which is what the CIA really, really likes. So went through that interview, then flew down to Washington, D.C., and did all the polygraphs, which, yes, it's just like the movies, right, where they strap you down to the chairs.
Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
And so I do the intern with them, and we're in a all hands meeting. They have some, you probably sort of like some of the Tom Clancy movies. It's the Bubble. It's a big auditorium in Langley, Virginia, and it seats about 4,000 people. And I'm in this meeting in the back because I'm a lowly GS employee, and they're talking about this new thing called the internet. Right? This is in the 1990, the new thing called the internet and communication systems. And I was young and stupid back then. So I raised my hand, not knowing you're not supposed to ask questions. So my boss is in the front, and she's like, put your hand down, man. And I'm like, I'm waving to her, thinking she's waving to me. So I ask a simple question that changes my life. And that question is this: how do we know these systems are secure? How do we know they're safe and protected? And they go back and forth, and they talk to each other, and they go, Eric, thank you for volunteering to solve the problem. I'm like, I don't want to solve the problem. I'm just asking a question. But that's what happens when you ask the hard questions. So they tasked me with doing this. And I originally thought there'd be like some set of process or procedures or mathematical algorithms you can run. But it turns out there's no way to prove something secure. There's no way to test or validate. The only way to do it is by trying to break in, is by playing the role of a hacker and trying to break in. So that's where I began my 8-year journey of essentially being a professional hacker, where they trained me to break into just about anything with a computer on planet Earth. Right? And one of the things I learned, which sounds a little funny, but breaking into systems is easy because there's always vulnerabilities. That's why after 8 years, I got bored with breaking into systems, and I switched to defense, because in hacking or breaking into a computer system, you only have to find one vulnerability, and it always exists. And it's usually the human, right? Usually social engineering or some human manipulation. But securing a system, you have to find all the exposure points, which makes it much harder and much more challenging.
Wow. A couple things on that. Number one is with the polygraph test, to go back to that real quick, was they're just asking to see if you have like good intentions, or what's kind of the whole like process with that?
So essentially what they're looking for are two things. One is there anything that you could be blackmailed for? So do you have any like deep, dark secrets, like you like to play with farm animals or things like that after hours that somebody could potentially blackmail you for, that they could use to get secrets out? And then the second one is they just want to make sure you weren't doing any like hallucinatory drugs that stay in your system for a significant time period that could alter or change your judgment on how you think or how you operate.
Oh my gosh. That's
they don't
insane.
mess around.
And then with those 8 years, you were hacking into, you're saying to companies, to organizations, to like what, like, can you give a few names of like certain things that you worked on hacking into to see if it was secure?
Well, with the CIA, the charter for the Central Intelligence Agency is always overseas. So at least my story, and I'm sticking to it because I don't like jail, or at least I don't think I like jail. I've never been in it, but it doesn't seem like a fun place to go, is we can only operate outside the United States. So it would be testing, verifying, validating outside the country. NSA, the National Security Agency, they're the ones that are actually authorized to be able to hack or break within the United States against U.S. citizens.
Wow.
Gotcha.
So then with technology evolving today, are there still different systems that you could potentially hack into with the same knowledge from back then?
Yes, because I've stayed up on that. So what I always tell people is, if it's a computer and it's connected to the internet, and here's the kicker, and it has functionality, there's always vulnerabilities. Here's the easiest way I describe it. A system that's 100% secure has zero functionality. I joke, if you want to be 100% secure, go Amish. Give up your computers, give up your tech. But as soon as you add any value or any functionality, you're decreasing the security. You're making a trade-off between functionality and security. So any system that has any functionality or any capabilities at all is always going to have vulnerabilities and exposures. The question is, how much energy and effort does it take to break in? And more importantly, how quickly will you be able to detect that I broke into your system?
And do you think inevitably this will ever be solved, or is this going to be an ongoing, there's always going to be security issues as we continue to evolve in technology, or is there a way to actually ever have a 100% secure system, whether it's the future of blockchain or the internet 2.0 or 3.0? I mean, is there always going to be security risks?
Yes, there's always going to be risks, but what it's going to come down to is people understanding it where it's an acceptable level of risk. The analogy I like to give is driving a car. Every time you get in a car, there is the possibility that you could get into a car accident. Somebody could run a red light, somebody might not doing what they're supposed to. There's no such thing as a 100% safe automobile, because there's always going to be risk and exposures. But we buy safe cars, we stop at red lights, we hopefully don't text as we're driving, which I don't always follow, and we try to be safe operators, so we minimize the risk, but it's never completely gone. So I think it's going to be the same way, where right now people just believe they're not a target, and they don't think there's any exposure points, so they tend to be very, very sloppy. And I think we're going to get to a point in a few years where there'll just be that higher level of maturity and awareness, like driving an automobile.
Gotcha. And what do you and who's more at risk? Do you think it's the big corporations or the individuals? And is it typically people are looking for your identity and your bank, your information for money? Is that typically the two things people are after?
Yes, so I always jokingly say, and it's still fairly accurate, if they're stealing intellectual property or things of high value, it's usually the Chinese. If they're stealing things financially driven, they want money, your identity, or things that could provide cash, it's the Russians. And if they're just destroying stuff and blowing stuff up, it's usually the Iranians, right? So that's usually our breakdown. But yeah, usually it's with individuals, some monetary gain. And I'll say at one level, anybody that has an identity or a dollar in a bank account are at risk, because it tends to be the people that don't have as much money are a bigger target, because they don't have as much security and their awareness is down. But I will tell you, the two groups that are the biggest target by far are people over 65 and people under 20. And it's for similar but opposite reasons. So over 65, most of these folks, they didn't grow up with technology. They don't really understand how it works. My mom still calls this a moose. I'm like, Mom, it's a mouse. What kind of mooses do you have? If she still calls it a moose, she doesn't understand the tech. And they're trying to conserve money, and they have a large amount that they could look for investment opportunities. So when they get those phishing scams that say, oh, you can double your money, or we need some money to transfer, they tend to trust people, and unfortunately a little naive. And because they don't know the tech, they typically fall victim to it. So they're the first ones. And my solution for them is pretty easy. Give them a non-Windows based system. Most of the malware out there today runs on a Windows operating system. So my mom, my aunt, my grandparents, I buy them all iPads, and they check email, surf the web on an iPad, and it's a much safer component because there's not as much running and there's not those exposure points. So that solution is easy. The other target group, which I have 3 right now, is under 20. Now, they are super tech savvy, but they are also very naive on the ways of the world. I just had this conversation with my 17-year-old daughter, where a 17-year-old boy that, according to her, was cute, right, was Instagramming her, or IGing her, or Snapchatting her on that stuff. And she's like, Dad, he's so cool. And I'm like, how do you know he's a 17-year-old boy? And she's like, well, of course he is, because he gave me a picture and he told me. And I'm like, do you realize 65% of 17-year-old boys are 40-year-old creepers that are out there trying to impersonate and target kids online. And like, she looks at me like, come on, Dad, that couldn't possibly be the case. She just never thought of that possibility. So those are the ones that I spend a lot of time on, because I really think you got to protect our future generation. And I'll tell you, you hack me and I'll get a little mad, but you go after my grandma or you go after my kids, and I'm fighting you, right? I'm getting real angry and pissed off at that point. But unfortunately, these attackers, they have no morals and no ethics, and they're going to go after the biggest exposure point.
Wow. I mean, this is kind of a loaded question, but are you familiar with TikTok at all and what's going on with that whole situation? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I have a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old. So like, my life, I think I'm in more TikTok videos just because that's all they're doing 24/7.
You know the dances?
Yeah, the dances and the other part with that. And yeah, I mean, that's another one that I had an interesting conversation with my daughter. Is she does TikToks all the time. And she's like, Dad, I had a TikTok that went viral. She goes, most of my TikToks maybe get a few hundred people. And I have a TikTok that got 9,000 views on it. And it was her in a bathing suit. And I was like, sweetie, I said, look at the context. I said, and I mean, her bathing suit's perfectly appropriate, but still, a bathing suit's a bathing suit.
Sure.
But I'm like, look at you fully clothed, you get 300 likes. You in a bathing suit, you get 9,000. I said, what's the difference here? And I felt a little bad because I didn't want to take away her excitement that she went viral. But I think she started to see that just what you're wearing and how you act and how you behave, that there are people and algorithms out there that target and find those individuals very, very quickly.
And do you feel, on the social media topic, that with TikTok, with Facebook, and all the other platforms, that's kind of like the new way that people are being able to access our data? Like, even with TikTok and all these apps running, I've heard even with Facebook, when you opt into other apps, they're collecting all of that data. What's your opinion on, like, what do they do with that data when they say that we own our data, they don't sell our data? What have you heard about that, or what do you know about selling data with these social platforms? Do they or don't they?
So yes and no. So what they're actually doing is, there's big money in target marketing. If you can identify somebody that's interested in your product, you're a big company, whether it's Coca-Cola or Doritos or Ford Motor Companies. If you can find people that are of your demographic profile that are interested in your product, that's worth significant amount of money to them. So what they're doing with these companies is they're building profiles of individuals. So they're taking your data, they're using your data, they're using your location, they're using everything you're saying and doing to build up a profile. And then they're aligning it with these people that are willing to pay money, these companies, and then they're linking that marketing messaging to you. So on the one hand, they're not directly selling your data to those third parties, but on the other hand, they're keeping all of this data, using it to do target marketing. And then the bigger concern is what happens when their security fails and somebody breaks or hacks into them. Now all of your data is exposed and available. And one thing I always point out to folks is, I use an iPhone, but if you use an iPad or anything else, just go in under general settings, go under privacy, and you'll see a button for location, one for camera, one for pictures, one for microphone. Click on those and they will show you all the apps that are tracking your location. They are show you all the apps that are using your microphone. And the thing to remember here is, free isn't free. I will tell you, almost every free app that you download, in order for that app to work, they must have access to your microphone, your camera, and your location, because what they're doing is taking your data and using that to offset the price of their development so they can sell marketing to third parties.
So with the microphone, are they actually being able to just have an algorithm pick up like conversations that we're having and keywords to be able to market to? Or is it like, what are they using the location specifically for, or the mic for?
So they're using the location services for finding out where you're located. So for example, if you're near a Burger King or you're near a McDonald's and they're paying for those services, you'll notice if you're active on Snapchat and others. And I've done this with my daughter to show them how vulnerable they are. All of a sudden, McDonald's ads pop up. And then when you get near Popeyes, Popeye ads pop up. So they're actually using that to do very direct marketing. The microphone they're using to listen in and target and find out what's of interest to you. I urge you to have some fun. Is this afternoon or tonight, like pick a topic, say a Ford F-150 or a Ford Corvette, and just with your phones out, just start talking about, oh, I'd love to get a Ford Corvette. I'd love a new car. I'd love this and that. Just say it 4 or 5 times. And I will almost guarantee when you start going into those apps, if you're heavy into them, all of a sudden you'll start seeing ads for Corvettes popping up and other things. And it happens to the point where I don't even notice it anymore. Like the other day we're trying to social distance, so we were making s'mores. And my kids were talking about chocolate bars, chocolate bars, chocolate bars. And for the next 24 hours, all my ads on all my social media apps were Hershey chocolate bars, because they're actually listening and tracking it. And when I tell people, they think I'm crazy. So that's why I'm like, try it out and see firsthand. Once you're aware of it and you realize what you're saying in front of your device, and then you look at the ads, you'll be like, wow, there's a very close synergy between what's happening.
You know, it's crazy too, because for me, I'll get a lot of ads on fashion, clothing, and I've noticed that there are some scams where you go and you click on these shops and these stores, but they actually just take your money and they don't send you anything. Have you seen that often? Is that just in fashion, or have you seen it in other industries? Because that's a pretty big scam going on, and I never want to, fall victim to it.
Yeah. What a lot of people don't realize is when you're on websites like CNN or Fox, or you're in apps, the ads aren't actually verified or validated. So the ads can be from anyone out there selling anything. And yeah, now I'm seeing them, a lot of these ads for toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and others. I tell you, just on a side note, I can understand the hand sanitizer, but like the toilet paper, I mean, did people not use toilet paper before? I mean, it's just, I don't understand the scam of that, but there's a lot of those scams. And here's the big thing I'll give you to look out for. The really nasty scams require debit cards. They'll go in and say, we don't accept credit card payment. We only accept debit card, or we only accept Bitcoins. And the reason is this: if you charge with a credit card and it's a scam, you're not out the money, the credit card company is. You have 30 days till you get your bill to report it. You can call it in and they're going to shut it down and investigate. But if you use a debit card, the money comes directly out of your account and you're liable, not the bank. So I would say, yes, there's a lot of those scams out there, but I know financial advisors go in and recommend debit cards because you're controlling your finances. But when it comes to the internet and online and scams, stay away from debit cards. They are the worst thing in the planet because you're giving an attacker direct access to your bank account.
That's a good tip. Yeah. I'm glad we use credit cards most of the time. I will always use credit cards moving forward.
Good. Excellent.
So that basically then is the negative part is people being able to phish, or people being able to provide you with fake ads. But just in general, like seeing ads of McDonald's or the F-150, that's not really a problem. Would you say though? Is it just kind of creepy more than it is an actual issue? Or what's the danger in companies advertising McDonald's if we're driving by? Do you find that to be like a big issue, or is there a bigger thing beneath that?
I mean, to me, it's more just of a social awareness issue. Like people freak out when they hear about that, but I'm sort of more in your camp where I'm like, honestly, most of the time it's more convenient to me. Because if I'm hungry and I'm looking for a burger and I'm talking to my kids about what do you want for dinner and ads pop up, I find that to be a positive. So the way I normally say it is, if you're a good law-abiding citizen and doing what you're supposed to, it's not really problematic. So the fact that some apps know where I've been, well, it's pretty boring. I've been to my office and I've been home and maybe a few restaurants for takeout, but there's not a lot going on. So for the most part, it's a little bit of a privacy issue because some of your personal data is being exposed, but it's not like super high risk where they can do identity theft or other factors. Where it becomes problematic is with folks that, let's say, have questionable lifestyle. So if you're going to a hotel or you're meeting up with people or you're going somewhere you're not supposed to, and it's things like that, what we're seeing now is they're using that for blackmail against the individuals. So they'll break into your phone, they'll pull your pictures, and if you have inappropriate pictures, they'll then send you an email saying, hey, unless you want your family to find out about this, you need to pay us $300 or we're going to release it. And the same thing with tracking your location and others. So we're seeing the bigger problem is more that your data is being stored for a long period of time and used by adversaries to blackmail or try to go after folks that might not want that information known to others.
Wow. Well, so, okay, that's on the blackmail end. Do you think, or do you know if this is ever going to be used to help get so-called the bad guys? If you can really listen in on conversations and, find out what happens before a crime occurs, do you think that would ever be happening, or is it happening?
It's funny because I always joke, I watch a lot of these movies, like sci-fi movies from 10, 15 years ago, and now they're starting to become a reality. And I forget the one with Tom Cruise, where it was maybe Future Crimes, where they were actually able to predict crimes that were going to occur and then actually stop them. And we're getting pretty close to that because you could be in a situation where if somebody has an Alexa at their home, or a cell phone turned on, and they either talk to a buddy or they're getting into an argument with their wife, and you hear somebody say, put down the knife or put down the gun, or I'm going to kill you or I hate you. I mean, it's to the point where you can have the recognition of that and then potentially deploy police officers to try to minimize or reduce the crime. The technology is there to do that today, but the laws aren't caught up. So right now, that's not necessarily legal for them to do that. But what is interesting is if there's a crime at a house or police show up and you allow the police into your house, or there's probable cause for them to go in and search the house, or they have a warrant to search your house, one of the first things when we train police officers to do is immediately find any electronics like Alexa or anything else and unplug them immediately. Because most of these devices are storing 2 to 4 hours worth of recordings to build up a profile, and then they just repeat themselves every 2 to 4 hours. So if you can get there and unplug them, you can actually have a live evidence of the last 2 to 4 hours. And I found in a couple of cases, I do expert witness, where courts are actually allowing that as evidence in a court of law, is actually the recordings from those devices. So we're slowly getting to this sort of pseudo police state, which gets a little scary, frightening, and exciting at the same time.
Yeah.
Isn't it kind of crazy though, how there's headlines and there's a lot of people who are uneasy about all of their data and their privacy, but yet we make decisions every day that give up our privacy, and I'm one of the people too, as long as there's not a camera in the bathroom or bedroom on me without me knowing, or someone stealing my bank information, I'm kind of cool with giving it up. Because do you feel like privacy in 5, 10, 15 years is there just going to be total transparency at that point? Do you see it moving into a direction where there is no privacy?
Yeah, I'm sort of today that privacy train left the station and it's never coming back. And like a perfect example that I use is now with everything going on with the epidemic, you have like Bill Gates talking about the chipping, where you put a chip under your skin. And I mean, I have people that are like, I am never going to do that. You're not going to track me over my dead body. And I laugh at them going, you're doing it already. And they go, what do you mean? I'm like, do you go anywhere without this device? Now, it's not embedded under your skin, but it might as well be. Right? I mean, people go to the restroom with it. People sleep with it. I mean, you don't go anywhere without your cell phone. And what they don't realize is it's the same thing. This device is tracking your location. It's tracking what you're saying. It's tracking what you're doing. So we already have that. It's just that the awareness level is not high enough for people to realize how impactful it is.
Wow. This is really fascinating. I'm excited. Before we wrap up, do you want to share a little bit about Secure Anchor and what people can learn about that?
Sure. So I've bought and sold multiple companies over the years. I'm sort of that unique breed of entrepreneur. I love building and solving problems, and I love technology. So I just always built cybersecurity companies. But Secure Anchor is really on a mission to make cyberspace safe. I believe that most people aren't aware of the dangers, like the great questions you both asked. So we're really trying to raise awareness. And then we offer consulting services, typically for medium to large size companies that really want to do security right. Because if you look at the big companies that have had breaches like Marriott, 500 million records, Equifax, 800 million records, they spent a lot of money on security. And they had dedicated teams of people, and they still got hacked because they weren't doing the right thing. They were doing good things, but not the right things. So what we try to do is help companies really understand what's the true risk, what's the real exposure from a hacker's perspective, right? Offense guides defense. So I show them what the real exposures and risks are, and then we put together cost-effective roadmaps for them to be able to fix and address those concerns. And then even for individuals on any of my social media, Dr. Eric Cole, DRERICCOLE, or a company's website, this is my studio. I film probably 30 to 40 minutes a day, just every day, just putting out content, because I really feel the best way to help people is to give out new content. And by giving out content, you'll get customers in return. So we give out a lot of free content to try to raise awareness and help people.
I love that. And then lastly, do you have any last tips for individuals trying to protect themselves in the cyberspace, like your number one tip just for the individual?
I would say the number one tip is to recognize and accept that you're a target, that you are going to be a target. And over the next 12 months, the probability that either your identity, your bank account, or something else is going to get hacked is almost a guarantee. So here's the solution. Almost everything you use today has security built in. It's just not turned on by default. So spend 5 minutes going and turning on the security. And the best security I recommend for your bank accounts, your credit cards, and others is account alerting. So anytime somebody tries to transfer money out of my bank account or do an EFT or use my credit card, I get a text notification. And the reason why that's important is if you catch fraudulent wire transfers within 24 hours, you can reverse it. If you wait till 48 hours or the end of the month, the money's gone. So getting visibility into your accounts. And I know some people go, but Eric, that's a pain. I'm going to get 3 or 4 texts a day. So which would you rather? Get 3 or 4 texts a day and have visibility, or in 7 months, spend $5 million because your identity was stolen? So it's one of those, the more visibility you can have recognizing you're a target, the safer you'll be in cyberspace.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Eric. This has been wonderful, eye-opening, and I'm so excited to get this out to our audience. And we're going to check you out on IG. And for all of you who are listening, go check out Secure Anchor. Check out Dr. Eric Cole on Instagram and all the other platforms. And we'd love to have you back sometime soon. This has been great.
I'd love to. This was awesome. I had a great time. So anytime you want, let me know, and I'd be happy to come back.
Amazing.
Perfect, man.
Thank you so much.
Have a good one. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.